The wooden broom handle connected with my cheekbone. It made a dry clack, like two wine glasses striking. My stepmother, Avery, hissed, "You don't deserve the Quinn name." 3 minutes later, my phone vibrated. Grandpa Edmund. "Taxi's outside. Don't argue. Bring the broom." The cab idled in the rain, its yellow light hitting the blood on my face. Destination, 77, Glass Row, Stonebrook Capital Headquarters. My name is Mara Quinn. I'm 29 years old, and my cheekbone feels like it has been split open by a dry piece of wood. The kitchen in our Glenbridge home is dark, save for the single, sterile LED light above the stove. It's 11:32 p.m. The air smells sharp, acrid. It's the industrial bleach Avery favors, the kind that strips the color from grout and burns your throat. She's standing over me, holding the mop. No, not the mop, the broom, the heavy-duty one for the garage, with the thick wooden handle. The smell of bleach and her perfume, something expensive and cold, like crushed leaves, clogs my sinuses. My left eye is watering, blurring the polished chrome of the refrigerator handle into a streak of light. I am on the floor, half propped against the cabinets. The sound is still ringing in my ear. That sharp, percussive clack from the hook. Wood on bone. I tasted copper instantly. Avery breathes heavily, not from exertion, but from a deeper, colder rage. Her expensive silk pajamas are immaculate. "I told you to drop it," she whispers. Her whisper is more terrifying than a shout. It's meant to be heard only by me, a secret between aggressor and victim. I try to speak, but my lip is already swelling. "It was a report." "It was trash," she counters, her voice tight. She raises the broom handle again, just slightly, and I flinch so hard my shoulder hits the dishwasher. "You are a glorified analyst, Mara, a line item. You do not get to question my vendors. You do not get to run your little audits on my operations." My watch, the thin silver one my mother left me, is on the floor. The glass is cracked. It slid off when I threw my arm up to block the first swing, the one that caught my forearm. The second swing, the one she aimed at my head. I ducked. The third one connected with my face. My father is in Singapore. He's been in Singapore for 2 weeks. The house is empty except for us. The silence of the suburbs presses in, a thick blanket that smothers sound. No one will hear this. "Your father," she says, stepping closer, "left me in charge of this house, of his affairs, and of operations at Stonebrook. You think because your grandfather's name is on the building, you have some kind of shield?" She laughs, a dry puff of air. "Edmund Quinn is an old man who likes old rules. I am the new rule." She leans down, the broom handle resting on her shoulder like a baseball bat. The smell of bleach is overwhelming. She must have been cleaning, a furious late-night purge, when I came down for water. "You are a guest in this house, Mara. You've been a guest for 2 years. And at the company? You are an employee, my employee. You will go in tomorrow. You will delete that draft from the server. And you will apologize to the procurement team for your overreach." My entire face is a drum, throbbing with a low, hot beat. The skin is tight. I can feel the blood. A thin, warm line, tracing a path down to my jaw. I don't wipe it. I keep my eyes on hers. "Or what?" I manage to say. The words are thick. Avery's smile is a thin, white line. "Or I will shred you. I will bury that report so deep no one will ever see it. And then I will bury you. I will have you fired for gross incompetence and professional malice. I will tell your father you're unstable, grieving, delusional. Who do you think he will believe? The weeping daughter stuck in the past, or the wife who doubled his fourth-quarter profits?" A vibration. My phone, in the pocket of my sweatpants, is vibrating against my hip. The sudden mechanical buzz cuts right through the tension. Avery straightens, her eyes narrowing at the sound. "Who?" I pull it out. The screen is blindingly bright in the dark kitchen. A text message. "Grandpa Edmund. Taxi's outside. Don't argue. Bring the broom. My heart stops, and then it starts again. Not with a beat, but with a slam. A heavy industrial thud, 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 like the old photocopy machine on the 34th floor, the one that shakes the floorboards when it runs a big job. Taxi's outside. Don't argue. Bring the broom. How did he know? The question flashes and dies. He always knows. I look at Avery, who is watching me with a confused, suspicious glare. I look at the broom in her hand. I look at my cracked watch on the tile. Slowly, I push myself up, using the cabinet for leverage. My legs are shaking. The blood drips from my chin onto the white collar of my pajama shirt. He wants to see me, I say. Avery's face contorts. Who? It's almost midnight. You're not going anywhere. Grandpa, I say. His name lands in the room like a block of ice. Avery's confidence wavers. Just for a second. Edmund Quinn, the founder, the patriarch, the 51% owner. He can't, she starts. He sent a car. I move, my body stiff with pain and adrenaline. I walk past her, toward the utility closet by the back door. My shoulder brushes hers. She flinches, as if I'm the one who just committed violence. What are you doing? She demands, following me. I open the closet. It smells of dust and old coats. There's a pile of reusable grocery bags, the heavy canvas ones. I grab the largest one, a faded green bag from a farmer's market. My heart is a machine. Thud, thud, thud. I turn back to her. I hold out my hand. Give it to me. What? The broom, I say, my voice flat. He said to bring it. For a full 10 seconds, we just stare at each other. Avery, her mind racing, trying to calculate this new variable. Me, my face a canvas of her rage, my hand outstretched. The power in the room has shifted. It hasn't left her, but it's no longer entirely hers. She's trying to figure out what he knows, the report, the vendors, or this. She slowly, reluctantly, hands me the broom. The wood is smooth, polished by use. I wonder if she wiped her fingerprints off. You're insane, she says, her voice losing its edge, replaced by a brittle uncertainty. You're both insane. I take the broom. It's heavier than I expected. I shove it, handle first, into the green canvas bag. The bristled end is too wide, so I have to force it, jamming it down until the bag strains at the seams. It looks absurd. A woman with a bleeding face, holding a giant canvas tote bag with a broomstick poking out the top. Follow the driver's instructions. I walk to the front door, my cracked watch still on the kitchen floor. I don't look back. I can feel her eyes on me, burning into my back. I pull open the heavy oak door. The rain is a silver sheet, just as the text said. A black sedan is idling at the curb, its lights cutting two perfect cones into the wet darkness of Glen Bridge. The cold air hits my face and the gash on my cheek stings. A fresh, sharp pain. A needle of ice. I walk down the stone path, one step at a time, the canvas bag heavy in my hand. I pull open the back door of the car and slide in. The driver doesn't look at me. He's a large man in a dark suit, his face impassive in the rearview mirror. The interior of the car smells of leather and ozone. The door closes with a heavy, soundproof thump, sealing out the world, sealing out Avery. He just pulls away from the curb, smoothly, no sudden movements. For a minute, we drive in absolute silence. The only sound is the rhythmic thwip, thwip of the windshield wipers. I'm trembling. The adrenaline is starting to fade, and the throbbing in my face is taking over. My whole body aches from the impact, from the fall. The driver reaches into the passenger seat and picks up a small bundle. He passes it back to me, still not speaking. It's a clean, white, folded towel and a plastic-wrapped ice pack, the kind you snap to activate. I look at him. Thank you. Instructions from Mr. Quinn, he says. His voice is deep and gravelly. He doesn't look at me in the mirror. His eyes are on the road. I snap the ice pack. The chemical cold floods into it. I wrap it in the soft towel and press it, gently, to my cheek. The pain is so intense I hiss, a sharp intake of breath. The cold is a relief, a different kind of pain, a cleaner one. We turn off the quiet, tree-lined streets of the suburbs onto the highway. The rain is coming down harder now, hammering on the roof. It weaves a silver net across the windows, blurring the world outside. Through the streaks of water, I see the lights of the city rising ahead of us, a cluster of sharp, electric jewels, the glass towers of the financial district, reflecting the storm, looking like an armada of ships in the dark. Stonebrook Capital, my grandfather's company, my company, Avery's company. The silence in the car stretches. I hold the ice to my face, my knuckles white. The canvas bag with the broom is on the seat next to me. It feels like a bomb. I have to know. My voice is small, hoarse. I touch my lips to the edge of the towel, a proxy for the ice pack. Why the broom? I ask the driver. I ask the silence. I ask myself. The driver's eyes meet mine in the rearview mirror, just a flicker. His expression is unreadable. Exhibit A, miss. The words hang in the air. Exhibit A. A cold, hard clarity cuts through the pain. This isn't a rescue. This isn't a grandfather worried about his granddaughter. This is a CEO gathering evidence. This is a chess move. The broom wasn't just a weapon. It's now a piece of documentation. The pain in my face isn't just an injury. It's proof. My heart calms. The chaotic, panicked, thud, thud, thud slows down. Settles into a steady, cold, hard rhythm. The rhythm of the machine. The car glides off the highway, taking the exit for the financial district. The streets here are canyons of steel and glass. The rain washes the sidewalks clean. At this hour, it's a ghost town, populated only by other black cars and the occasional security guard. We pull up in front of 77 Glass Row. The building is a sheer cliff of dark glass. Its name, Stonebrook Capital, etched in subtle, backlit silver letters above the revolving doors. The lobby is lit, a bright, cold white rectangle. And above the name, the electronic ticker, the one that usually scrolls stock prices and market news, is frozen. It's holding on a single, stark message, glowing white against the black screen, reflected in the wet pavement. Stonebrook Capital, 77 Glass Row, board session, 11:45 p.m. I check the car's clock, 11:41 p.m. The driver puts the car in park. He turns to me for the first time. "He's waiting for you, Miss Quinn." I nod. I take the ice pack from my face. The skin is numb. I pick up the green canvas bag. Exhibit A. I open the door. I stepped out of the taxi. The rain had momentarily stopped, and the silence of the financial district at 11:41 p.m. was absolute. The air was heavy and cold. I pulled the handle of the massive, plate glass door to 77 Glass Row. The brushed steel was frigid, sending a separate, sharp chill up my arm, distinct from the hot, throbbing pain in my cheek. The lobby was a cathedral of silence and stone, honed gray slate tiles, each one the size of a boardroom table, stretched out before me, absorbing the sound of my sneakers. The air was sterile, recycled, and chilled to a precise 68 degrees. It was the perfect, neutral temperature for preserving capital. Directly ahead, on a 2-story wall of unbroken, polished black marble, the Stonebrook Capital logo was mounted. It was a spearhead, rendered in brushed silver. It wasn't a logo meant to inspire trust or welcome. It was designed to communicate precision, penetration, and aggressive victory. It was a logo that pointed directly at anyone who entered, a silent challenge. The security desk was a monolithic block of the same gray slate, an altar to corporate defense. Frank, the night supervisor, was on duty. Frank was ex-NYPD, a man whose face was a mask of professional calm. A man who had seen everything. He usually had a dry joke about the market or a complaint about the weather for me. Tonight, his face was carved from the same stone as his desk. He saw me, his eyes, trained to perform rapid, neutral assessments. did a perfect sweep. They registered my sweatpants and pajama top. They registered the raw, red abrasion on my left cheekbone, which was already blooming into a dark, ugly purple. They registered the absurd, faded green canvas bag in my hand, with the smooth wooden handle of a broom sticking out of the top. His gaze did not linger. He did not ask, "Miss Quinn, are you okay?" He did not ask, "Why are you carrying a broom?" His expression didn't flicker with pity, or shock, or even curiosity. There was only the flat, opaque mask of a man who had received a very specific set of instructions. "Miss Quinn," he said, his voice a low, respectful rumble. "Frank," I managed to say. My voice was a hoarse croak. "Mr. Quinn's guest," he stated. It was not a question. It was a reclassification. I was no longer an employee on the night roster. I was a guest of the founder. Arriving outside of all known protocols, he tapped a single key on his console. A small, brushed steel gate, almost invisible against the slate wall, buzzed open. It was the executive bypass, the one that led directly to the high-speed, private elevator bank. I walked through. The gate clicked shut behind me with the heavy, oiled sound of a vault locking. This was the difference. My employee ID was in my wallet. Back at the house, useless. My entry tonight was authorized by a power that superseded key cards and check-in procedures. As I walked the 50 feet of gray slate to the elevators, the polished floor threw back a distorted, wavering reflection of me, a woman in stained pajamas, face injured, clutching a household cleaning implement like a pagan staff. This was not the reflection of Mara Quinn, senior risk analyst. My job is my sanctuary. It is the one part of my life where there is no ambiguity, only data. I work in the internal audit and risk division. The rest of the company calls us the data vultures when they think we can't hear. We aren't the star traders on the 30th floor or the portfolio managers on 32. We are the plumbers. We are the ones who trace the pipes, find the leaks, and assess the structural integrity of the entire organization. My specific function is vendor and procurement risk. I chase the money going out of the company. I find the anomalies. My talent is pattern recognition. I'm the one who notices when a new consulting firm invoices for exactly $49,999, just $1 below the $50,000 threshold that triggers an automatic executive-level review. I'm the one who cross-references the incorporation date of a new logistics partner and finds it was registered with the state just 2 days before it won a 7-figure contract. I find the ghost vendors. A ghost vendor is an elegant corporate crime, a fiction, a shell company created for the sole purpose of submitting fraudulent invoices for services never rendered or goods never delivered. It is theft by spreadsheet. It requires arrogance, inside access, and a core belief that no one is watching the small numbers. My entire job is to watch only the small numbers, knowing they always add up to a very large one. For the last 3 weeks, I had been hunting the most brazen, arrogant ghost I had ever seen. The elevator doors opened with a whisper of compressed air. The interior was a box of brushed steel and cool, indirect lighting, smelling faintly of a citrus-based industrial cleaner. I stepped inside. The canvas bag thumped against the wall. I pressed the button for 34, the executive floor. The doors slid shut, sealing me in. The ascent was fast and silent, a smooth, pressurized glide. My reflection was sharper here, trapped with me in the steel box. The swelling had started in earnest. My left eye was beginning to puff up. The gash itself was a dark, angry line, a stark contrast to my pale skin. To the left of the control panel, a small, high-definition screen was embedded in the steel wall. It cycled through corporate messaging, a silent, endless loop of manufactured culture, innovation, integrity, impact. Our people are our strength, a global leader in responsible growth. Then, the slide I was thinking about clicked into view. It was a new one, pushed to all corporate displays just last month by the HR and operations departments, after a rival firm had a messy public lawsuit over an executive's behavior, a commitment to a safe workplace. Stonebrook Capital maintains a zero-tolerance policy for workplace violence, harassment, and intimidation. See intranet portal HR 405 for details. A harsh, dry sound escaped my throat. It was half laugh, half gasp, and it sent a spike of pure, white-hot pain through my cheekbone. Zero tolerance, Avery Knox Quinn, my stepmother, the new, celebrated VP of Operations, the very person who would have signed off on the budget for this safe workplace campaign, the woman who just beat me with a wooden broomstick in my own kitchen for doing my job. The irony was so dense, it was acidic, it burned in my throat, more than the bleach. I leaned my head against the cool steel wall, closing my eyes for a second. I could see her emails from this afternoon, as clear as the HR slogan on the screen. I had submitted my preliminary findings. Knox Procurement LLC, a new vendor flagged for highly irregular billing, massive, round-number invoices for storage and logistics advisory, a service for which we already had 2 established providers at triple the market rate. Avery's reply had been fast, sharp, and copied to my direct superior. Subject: Vendor Query, Knox LLC. Mara. This report is bloated. The data is thin. You're chasing shadows and wasting man-hours. I've seen your team's quarterly projections, and this is not a priority. Trim that report. Focus on material risk, not clerical anomalies. We need to keep optics clean for the Q4 review. Keep optics clean. The corporate phrase for bury it. It wasn't just the inflated billing or the non-existent services that had caught me. It was the name, Knox, Avery's maiden name. It was lazy. It was breathtakingly arrogant. She was so insulated by her new marriage to my father, so confident in her new executive power, that she didn't even bother to create a convincing fiction. She was siphoning company funds into a shell corp named after herself, daring a glorified analyst like me to question it. I had questioned it. This morning, I had bypassed my boss and sent the full file, with the metadata showing the invoices were created on her own laptop, directly to Edmund. Her email was a warning. The Broom was the enforcement. Ding. The elevator slowed, its quiet hum dropping in pitch. The doors slid open onto the 34th floor, the executive floor. Silence. The main office was a vast, dark ocean. After 10 p.m., the harsh overhead lights cut out, leaving only the automated systems. The sprawling open-plan space was transformed. Hundreds of monitors, left in sleep mode, glowed with a faint, pulsing blue and white light. They were like deep-sea creatures, sleeping in the depths. The air was still. The only sound was the omnipresent, whispered whoosh of the industrial HVAC system. A dragon sleeping in the walls. I could smell it. The faint, acrid scent of burnt coffee, left on a hot plate too long in the executive kitchenette hours ago. It was the smell of late nights, of deals closed at 2 a.m., of ambition that outlasts the day. My sneakers were silent on the plush, midnight blue carpet. I walked past the empty workstations of the executive assistants, their desks obsessively neat, keyboards and mice aligned, past the darkened, glass-walled offices of the chief financial officer and the general counsel. Their doors were closed, their secrets safe for the night. At the far end of the floor, a rectangle of white light spilled onto the carpet. The glass room. It's our main boardroom, and it's Edmund Quinn's masterpiece. It's famous in architectural magazines. It's a box of pure glass, cantilevered out from the side of the building, suspended 34 floors above the highway. 3 of its 4 walls are floor-to-ceiling, seamless panes of glass, offering a stunning 180-degree view of the city's glittering lights and the endless red and white streams of traffic below. It was designed to be the physical manifestation of transparency, a room of light and air where billion-dollar decisions could be made, seemingly exposed to the world. Tonight, it looked like a stage. I could see figures inside, their dark shapes silhouetted against the bright, rain-slicked city. I stopped just outside the massive, 10-foot-tall glass doors, My hand hovered over the heavy, stainless steel handle. My heart was pounding again, but it was not the panicked, animal fear from the kitchen. This was different. This was cold adrenaline. This was focus. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. The screen lit up my injured face. Another text from Grandpa Edmund. One line. Tonight, we use truth as policy. Not as a virtue, not as a moral imperative, as policy, as a mechanism, as a corporate tool, as a weapon. He was speaking my language, the language of risk, of compliance, of rules that are not meant to be broken, but to be used. The tremor in my hands stopped. The pain in my face receded, becoming just a data point. The broom in my bag was no longer a symbol of my humiliation. It was documentation. I heard a sound from inside, a man's voice, low and indistinct. Then, the sharp, deliberate scrape of a heavy chair leg on the stone floor. I looked at the clock on my phone's lock screen. 11:42 p.m. I shifted my grip on the canvas bag. The broom handle heavy and solid. I pushed the door open and walked in. The glass door swung open on a silent, hydraulic hinge. The light inside the glass room was not the warm, ambient glow of a late-night session. It was the full, shadowless, white-blue glare of the overhead presentation lights, the ones used for scrutinizing spreadsheets and legal fine print. It was a sterile, surgical light, a light that left no room for interpretation. My grandfather, Edmund Quinn, was at the head of the long, obsidian-black table. It was a single, polished slab of stone that reflected the city lights outside like a dark, still lake. He was sitting perfectly still, his hands clasped over the silver head of his walnut cane. To his left sat Ms. Valen, our general counsel, her back spine straight, a stack of black, leather-bound binders placed in a perfect, neat rectangle in front of her. They weren't looking at the city. They were looking at the door, at me. Their eyes registered my arrival. Valen's gaze was sharp, a lawyer's assessment, instantly cataloging my stained pajama shirt, the angry, swelling trauma on my left cheekbone, and the heavy canvas bag in my hand. My grandfather's expression was unreadable. It was the same neutral, assessing look he wore when analyzing a hostile takeover bid. And in that sterile, blindingly white room, surrounded by the architecture of corporate power, I finally understood Avery. I didn't just see the woman who had hit me with a piece of wood. I saw the entire corporate story she had written for herself, a story I had just threatened to expose as fiction. Avery Knox. She wasn't always Avery Quinn. She arrived in my father's life 2 years after my mother's death, a whirlwind of polished grief counseling and sharp, minimalist style. She was beautiful, but not in a soft, welcoming way. Her beauty was an asset, a tool, like her MBA from Wharton and her innate, terrifying understanding of public relations. She knew, better than anyone I had ever met, how to manage perception. She married my father in a quiet, tasteful ceremony at the City Club, an event that was, coincidentally, featured in a 2-page spread in a high society magazine. "A new chapter for the Quinns," the headline read. Her entry into Stonebrook Capital was just as smooth, just as perfectly choreographed. It wasn't a crass request for a job from a new wife. It was a consulting role. She was brought on to advise on brand synergy and internal messaging. She was brilliant at it. She spoke in a language of optics, alignment, leveraging our narrative, and value-driven narratives. She was the one who had the Stonebrook Capital logo, our silver spearhead, subtly etched onto the water glasses in the executive lounge. Within 6 months, her consulting role evolved. She presented a strategic plan to the board, my grandfather included, on operational streamlining and brand cohesion. My father was proud. I was, admittedly, impressed. She was made vice president of operations. Her catchphrase, the one she used in all-hands meetings and had printed on brushed steel plaques for the elevator banks, was her entire philosophy. Perception is profit. If the market believed Stonebrook was lean, aggressive, and flawless, our stock would reflect it. If our high net worth clients believed they were part of an exclusive, powerful, and immaculate club, they would pay higher management fees. The truth of the underlying assets, the messy reality of risk and debt, was secondary to the story we told about them. Avery wasn't a VP of Ops. She was our chief storyteller. She was the company's head of PR, masquerading as an operations executive. And the story she wanted to tell required a budget. My first real clash with her wasn't personal. It was professional. It was data. As VP of Ops, Avery controlled the internal budget. I watched, from my analyst's desk on the 28th floor, as her new policies took effect. The brand hospitality budget, the fund for client dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, private jets to industry conferences, and gift baskets filled with $1,000 bottles of wine, tripled. Simultaneously, the employee benefits package was restructured. Our 401k match was reduced by a percentage point. The healthcare plan provider was switched, resulting in higher deductibles and smaller networks. The performance bonus pool for non-executive staff, my entire division, was reallocated to strategic growth initiatives. I saw the numbers. She was, quite literally, taking money from the employees and using it to fund the perception of wealth for our clients. Perception is profit, she'd said, smiling, in the town hall meeting where she announced the cuts. She received polite applause. But I am a risk analyst. My job isn't perception, it is reality. My job is to find the rot beneath the polished floorboards. My job is to quantify the unquantifiable, to trace the untraceable. And Avery, for all her PR savvy, was sloppy. She was arrogant. She believed her own story. Standing there in the glass room, the throb in my face a steady metronome of pain. I remembered the exact moment the floorboard creaked. It started 3 weeks ago. A new vendor appeared on the quarterly books, Knox Procurement LLC. The name was the first red flag. Knox, her maiden name. It was so brazen it was almost a dare. It was an act of supreme confidence, a belief that no one would ever look, or that if they did, they wouldn't dare question it. I pulled the invoices. They were for storage and logistics advisory, a service for which we already had 2 established, long-term providers. The billing was astronomical, just shy of $300,000 for the first quarter alone. This wasn't a $49,000 invoice, the kind designed to slide under the automatic review cap. This was a I don't care who sees invoice. The billing rate was triple the market average, a fact I confirmed in 20 minutes with a few phone calls. I ran the corporate registration for Knox Procurement LLC. It was registered in Delaware just 4 months ago, 1 month after she was confirmed as VP. The address listed was a UPS store in Wilmington, a classic, textbook shell. This was a ghost vendor, my specialty. But I needed the final, irrefutable link. I needed to tie the fiction to the author. I filed a request with IT for the invoice metadata, citing a standard vendor audit protocol. The metadata report came back yesterday afternoon. It was the digital fingerprint, the PDF invoices, so professional and sleek, bearing the Knox Procurement LLC logo, hadn't been created by some third-party firm in Delaware. They had been created in Adobe Acrobat Pro, licensed to a very specific machine ID. SBPLTA Quinn. Avery Quinn. She wasn't just siphoning money. She was doing it from her own company-issued laptop, too arrogant or too stupid to even use a burner phone or a public computer. She was creating fake invoices for a fake company named after herself, emailing them to our accounts payable department, and then using her own VP-level authority to approve her own payments. A perfect, closed loop of fraud. I spent last night and all of today compiling the final report, the bank transfers, the metadata logs, the market rate comparisons, the timeline of her employee budget cuts, versus the first appearance of Knox LLC. It was a perfect, airtight case of embezzlement, a story not of perception, but of cold, hard theft. I had planned to give it to my grandfather this afternoon, quietly. I wanted to handle it in the family, if such a thing was still possible. I don't know what I wanted, to show him the truth. But Avery is VP of Ops. She sees everything. She must have seen my IT request for the metadata. She must have known the clock was ticking. I had been waiting for her to call me into her office, to use her corporate power to threaten my job. I was prepared for a corporate fight. I was prepared for HR, for legal threats, for a professional war. I was not prepared for 11:30 p.m. ambush in the kitchen. And standing there, under the surgical lights of the glass room, my throbbing cheek connecting the two worlds, I finally, fully understood. The broom, the attack, it wasn't just a fit of blind rage. It wasn't just a stepmother losing control over a rebellious stepdaughter. It was a corporate strategy. She had tried the corporate warning first, the email she sent me this afternoon, the one I had ignored. Trim that report. Keep optics clean. When I didn't listen, she escalated, but she couldn't fire me, not for finding the truth. That would look suspicious. And perception is her entire game. A firing would trigger an HR review. Questions. It would draw attention to the very thing she wanted to hide. So she switched tactics. She couldn't attack the analyst at work, so she attacked the stepdaughter at home. The violence wasn't the goal. It was the tool. It was a desperate, crude, and deeply personal attempt to intimidate me, to terrify me into silence, to stop the report from ever seeing the light of day. She was trying to beat the data out of me. She thought the blood on my face would make me weak, make me compliant. She thought I would be too scared, too ashamed, too emotional to follow through. She thought I would be a crying girl, not a risk analyst. She miscalculated. The violence wasn't a cover for the fraud. It was the proof of the fraud's existence. It was her signature on the confession. I looked at my grandfather. He was still watching me, his gaze steady. He hadn't moved. He hadn't spoken. I let the canvas bag slide from my hand. It landed on the plush, midnight blue carpet with a heavy, solid thud. The sound was muffled, but in the absolute silence of the room, it was as loud as a gunshot. The broom handle, polished and smooth, slid partially out of the bag, the bristles exposed, resting on the floor like an accusation. I didn't need my report. I didn't need the metadata logs. I just needed this. My cheek was the evidence. The broom was the affidavit. Avery's entire corporate story, her meticulously built narrative of perception, was about to collide with my reality of proof. And I knew, looking at my grandfather's cold, calculating eyes, that in his company, there was only one that mattered. I stood just inside the threshold. The heavy glass door whispered shut on its hydraulic hinge, sealing the three of us in the suspended box of light, high above the sleeping city. Ms. Vallon, the general counsel, watched me with the impassive focus of a hawk, her hands resting near a stack of black binders. My grandfather, Edmund Quinn, hadn't moved. He remained seated at the head of the long obsidian table, a monolith in a dark, perfectly tailored vest, his hands clasped over the silver head of his walnut cane. He was 78, but his eyes were the youngest thing in the room, sharp, clear, and utterly devoid of sentiment. His gaze traveled from my eyes down to the raw, weeping abrasion on my left cheekbone, then to the dark purple swelling beneath my eye. He saw the dried streak of blood on my jaw. He saw my pajama shirt, stained with that same blood. There was no flicker of grandfatherly concern. No Mara, are you all right? No shock, no pity. His mask of the benign patriarch, the one he wore at Christmas dinners, was gone. This was not Grandpa. This was Edmund Quinn, the founder, the 51% owner. He regarded my injury with the same cool, dispassionate interest he might give a sudden, unfavorable shift in the LIBOR rate. It was a data point, a new variable that had entered his equation. He looked from my face to the canvas bag on the floor. "Documentation?" he asked. His voice was quiet, not a whisper, but a calibrated, low-volume statement that cut through the silence. It was not a question of my well-being. It was a request for evidence. I bent down. The movement sent a fresh spike of pain through my face. I gripped the canvas bag and lifted it, placing it on the cold, black, reflective surface of the boardroom table. The bag was stained with rainwater. I met his eyes. Then, I reached into the bag and pulled out the broom. It was absurd. A common, wooden-handled broom, its cheap plastic bristles slightly frayed. It looked alien in this temple of high finance. It was an object of domestic drudgery, of filth. I laid it on the obsidian table, positioning it between my grandfather and Ms. Valen. The polished wood of the handle, the spot I knew she had gripped, gleamed under the surgical overhead lights. Ms. Valen did not react. She merely looked at the broom. My grandfather stared at it for a long, silent moment. Then, he gave a single, sharp nod. "Exhibit A," he said, confirming the driver's words. He had been expecting it. "You were thorough," Edmund said. He tapped a small, integrated touchscreen on the table in front of him, the massive, wall-sized monitor at the end of the glass room, previously dark, flickered to life. It wasn't a news feed or a stock ticker, it was my report. It was the dashboard I had built, the one I had emailed him this afternoon, the flowcharts mapping the money from Stonebrook's operational accounts to the ghost vendor, Knox Procurement LLC. But it was different. It was my data, but he had added his own layer. "Your analysis was correct," he said, his voice as calm as a university lecturer's, "but incomplete." On the screen, my simple flowchart now had new, color-coded annotations, added by him. Lines branched off from Knox LLC to two other shell corporations I hadn't found. From there, the money trail didn't just stop in a Delaware bank, it moved, split, and was then used to purchase non-liquid assets, specifically a portfolio of commercial real estate in Arizona. "She wasn't just stealing," Edmund said, almost to himself, a note of detached disappointment in his voice. "She was investing, using our capital to build her own empire, then using our resources to hide it." He turned his gaze back to me. "Your father, he sees a wife, I see a competitor who gained access through a marriage certificate, a parasite." He leaned forward, his voice dropping slightly. "Avery is an excellent VP of operations. She cut costs. She boosted margins. I admired her work. I even admired her ambition." He paused. "But perception is not profit. Mara, perception is a balloon. Profit is a stone. She mistook one for the other." He tapped another key. The screen changed to a complex, dizzying diagram of holding companies and family trusts. At the very top, a single box. EQT, Edmund Quinn Trust. "Your father is the CEO," he said, the words light, like he was discussing the weather. "He is the face, the name on the door, but he is a salaried employee. I own 51% of this firm, not directly, through a series of interlocking trusts so complex that the SEC itself would need a year to unravel them. I am the firm. The firm is me." He gestured to the empty chairs around the long table. "This is not a family meeting. This is a special session of the Board of Directors, convened by the majority shareholder." He looked at Ms. Valen. "Isn't that right, Counselor?" "Yes, Mr. Quinn," Valen said. Her voice was as dry as parchment. "Under corporate bylaws, Article 9, Section 2, a majority shareholder may call an emergency session to address material harm to the firm. A quorum is established via the video links." Edmund looked back at me. "Your report on Knox LLC was the material harm. It was all we needed. Financial malfeasance, embezzlement." "Then why?" I whispered, my hand instinctively going to my swollen cheek. "Why the taxi? Why this?" I pointed at the broom. "Because the fraud was leverage," he said. "The violence is the trigger." He steepled his fingers. "Fraud is messy. It involves lawsuits, clawbacks, accountants, auditors. It can take years. It damages the brand. Perception, as Avery would say. But assault," he said, his eyes locking onto my injury, "is simple. It is clear. It is policy." He quoted from memory. "Stonebrook Capital maintains a zero-tolerance policy for workplace violence and intimidation. She didn't assault an employee in the workplace, I countered, the analyst in me automatically finding the loophole. She assaulted her stepdaughter at home. Did she? Edmund smiled. It was the first time I had seen him smile tonight, and it was a terrible, cold thing. Or did a senior vice president, in a premeditated act, physically intimidate a senior analyst to force the suppression of a damaging internal audit? She used violence to protect her financial crimes and to obstruct a corporate investigation. That, Mara, is workplace violence, regardless of location. The nexus is clear. The policy applies. He reached across the table, his hand old and veined, but his grip impossibly strong. He didn't pat my hand. He didn't squeeze it for comfort. He placed his hand over mine, pinning it to the cold, hard table, a gesture of alliance, not affection. Your report was the bomb. Mara, her attack on you was the detonator. Tonight, he said, his voice a low, precise engine, is compliance theater, and it is justice. Good, Ms. Valen said. Speaking for the second time, she opened the first of her black binders. Let's establish the record. This, I understood. This was my world. The emotion, the pain, the shock. It all evaporated, replaced by the cold, clear logic of data. The report on Knox Procurement LLC, Valen began, was received by Mr. Quinn at 16:04 hours. You have the full evidence chain for the fraud? I do, I said. My voice was steadier now. The invoice series, time-stamped, the wire transfer logs from accounts payable, the metadata from the PDF files, linking their creation to Avery Quinn's unique machine ID, the market rate comparisons for the advisory services, and the corporate registration for the ghost vendor. Chain of custody? She asked. This was the test. All data was pulled directly from the Stonebrook servers and validated against the system's internal logs. The metadata was confirmed by the IT department's forensics lead. I have the hash values for all original files. Nothing has been altered. Valen nodded, satisfied. She made a check mark on a piece of paper. Now, she said, Exhibit A, the assault. My grandfather finally released my hand. It occurred at approximately 11:32 p.m. at my father's residence in Glenbridge, I stated, my voice as flat and robotic as the security guards. The aggressor was Avery Quinn. The weapon is the item on the table. And the motive? Valen asked, her pen poised. She explicitly stated that if I did not shred that draft, referring to the Knox LLC report, she would shred me. She threatened to have me fired for gross incompetence and to bury the report. Documentation? Edmund repeated his first question. I looked at him. This was the one place I thought I was mistaken. I hadn't recorded it. It had been an ambush. It was just me, I said. My grandfather smiled that terrible smile again. No, Mara, it wasn't. He tapped his phone, which was resting on the table. He pressed play on a voice memo. The glass room was suddenly filled with the sound of the kitchen. My kitchen. My own voice, thick with pain. Or what? And then, Avery's, clear as a bell, dripping with malice. Or I will shred you. I will bury that report so deep no one will ever see it. And then I will bury you. I will have you fired. I will tell your father you're unstable, grieving, delusional. My blood ran cold, colder than the ice pack, colder than the marble lobby. I looked at my phone, the one he had given me for my birthday last year. A company phone, he'd called it. For security. How? I whispered. A feature, Edmund said, switching off the recording. A remote-activated, encrypted audio log. For high-level executive protection, my text to you, taxis outside, was the activation keyword. It recorded the last 5 minutes of conversation, a rolling buffer. You don't walk into a war unarmed. Mara. He had been listening. He had listened to her threaten me. He had listened to the sounds of the struggle. He had waited. He had waited until she had incriminated herself perfectly, linking the violence directly to the fraud. He had waited until he had his trigger. My shock must have been visible on my face. This, he said, gesturing to the entire room, the company, the city, was not built on sentiment. It was built on foresight and control. Ms. Valen closed her binder. The record is established. The evidence is secured. The articles of dismissal are drafted. She's coming here? I asked, the final piece clicking into place. The board session wasn't just about her. It was for her. Oh, yes, Edmund said. I sent her a text as well. Emergency board meeting, 11:45 p.m. Your operations budget. She thinks this meeting is about her triumphs. She thinks she is coming here to defend her budget against your overly emotional report. She has no idea. She will come in, Edmund continued. See you, see the Broom, and she will deny everything. She will call you a liar. She will say you are unstable. She will try to control the perception. He pointed to his phone. But she won't be able to control the policy or the audio file. Right on cue, a soft, high-pitched ding echoed from the elevator bay outside the glass room. It was the sound of the executive elevator arriving at the 34th floor. Silence. Then, a new sound. A sound that didn't belong in the muffled, carpeted quiet of the executive floor. It was sharp, fast, and aggressive. Click, clack, click, clack. The sound of $1,000 spike-heeled shoes hitting the stone landing just outside the boardroom. It was the sound of Avery Knox Quinn, arriving for her own execution. My grandfather leaned back in his chair, his mask of the benign founder sliding perfectly back into place. The footsteps stopped. A shadow fell across the glass door. "Showtime," Edmund Quinn whispered. The click-clack of her heels on the stone landing outside the glass room had stopped. A perfect, sharp silence fell, heavy and absolute. A shadow, crisp and dark, fell through the glass door, cast by the hallway lights. She was there, standing right outside. I imagined her, just on the other side of the glass. She would be checking her reflection in the polished steel of the doorframe, smoothing her perfect, dark hair, adjusting the lapels of her sharp, ridiculously expensive blazer, the one she must have thrown on over her pajamas. She was composing her face. She was preparing her mask as VP of Operations, ready to walk into an emergency meeting she believed she was controlling. She thought she was here to discredit me, to dismiss my bloated report as the work of an overly emotional analyst. She was wrong. She wasn't walking into a meeting. She was walking into a meticulously constructed legal cage, and the door was about to lock behind her. In that suspended, agonizing moment of silence before the handle turned, my gaze fixed on Ms. Valen, our general counsel. She was the corporate embodiment of the law. A woman who billed at $2,200 an hour and was worth every cent. She didn't look at the door. She didn't acknowledge the shadow. She was looking at her tools. In front of her, the black binders. They were aligned with the edge of the obsidian table, their spines perfectly parallel. They were an arsenal. I knew Valen's methods. These weren't notes. They were scripts. One binder for personnel violations, one for financial malfeasance, one for the corporate bylaws. Each one was tabbed, indexed, and cross-referenced. This was not a discussion. This was an arraignment, prepared in less than 7 hours. My grandfather's power, I was realizing, wasn't just in his 51% ownership. That gave him the throne. But his control came from his meticulous, brutal understanding of the rules. The trap he had set for Avery wasn't a trap at all. It was just process. He wasn't bending the rules. He was going to beat her to death with them. The recording he'd played, Avery's voice, "I will shred you," was the centerpiece. It was the nexus. I felt a flicker of my own analytical doubt, the risk analyst in me needing to check the math. "The recording," I whispered, my voice hoarse. The skin on my cheek felt like it was splitting as I spoke. "Is it clean? She'll say it's illegal. She'll say it's inadmissible." Ms. Valen heard me. She answered without looking up, her voice a flat, legal monotone, as if reading from a brief. "This state is a one-party consent jurisdiction. Mr. Quinn was a party to the communication, which was initiated by his text message. Furthermore, the device is company property, provisioned for executive use, and most critically, the communication pertains directly to the threatened destruction of company assets, namely, your audit data, and the intimidation of a company employee in the performance of their duties. She finally looked at me, her eyes as cold as the glass walls. It is not only admissible in an internal review. Miss Quinn, it's the smoking gun. It establishes motive and intent, tying the financial crime directly to the physical act. She tapped the thickest binder. The meeting itself is also ironclad. The compliance memo summoning this special session was digitally signed by Mr. Quinn at 1700 hours, citing Article 9, Section 2 of the Stonebrook Charter. A clear and present danger to the firm's financial and ethical integrity. Your audit was the danger. Avery's subsequent assault was the clear and present part. This was a coordinated, multi-front operation. It wasn't just the three of us in this room. This room was just the command center, the tip of the spearhead. The entire corporate machine had been activated. The board? I asked, looking at the empty chairs. On the line, Edmund said. He gestured to the main screen, which currently showed my annotated report on Knox LLC. Mr. Davies from the London office and Ms. Thorne from Hong Kong are patched in via a secure, encrypted Zoom link. They are muted, for now. But they are observing. They received the preliminary brief an hour ago. He paused. They are deeply concerned about the operational risk Avery has introduced. External counsel is also on standby, Valen added, her voice a seamless continuation of his. A senior partner at Wachtell. They are reviewing the file not for our defense, but for referral. This trap isn't just internal, it's parallel. We are building the case that we will hand to the district attorney's office. We are not just firing her, Miss Quinn. We are prosecuting. This was the difference. Avery thought she was in a family dispute. She was prepared for drama, for tears, for an argument with my father. She was not prepared for the full, dispassionate, and infinitely resourced legal department of a multi-billion-dollar capital firm. What about right now? I asked. Frank, down at security, Edmund said, has already received the automated packet. The moment the board votes aye, and they will, a signal will be sent. Avery's proximity card will be deactivated. Mid-meeting, her corporate accounts, her email, her cloud access, her company credit cards, all frozen. HR has the suspension and termination paperwork drafted and time-stamped, waiting for my electronic signature. It was the corporate equivalent of a SEAL team operation. Silent, precise, and total. No loose ends. They had the corporate structure, the legal framework, and the logistics of the execution, but I had provided the ammunition. The data, I said, my analyst brain fully online, clicking through the vulnerabilities. She'll try to delete it. She'll say I fabricated it. She'll say I'm unstable. She already tried, Edmund said, a flicker of something almost like pride in his eyes. When you didn't respond to her threatening email, she accessed the server from her home IP address at 1730. She attempted to delete the root directory containing your audit, but I had IT freeze the file and move it to a secure hold the moment I received your email. It was already firewalled. Her attempt was logged. I uploaded the complete, finalized package to the internal audit vault before I left my desk. I stated, the metadata, the invoices, the wire transfer logs, all sealed in a container file with an SJ256 hash. The timestamp is 1600. This was my language, a cryptographic hash, an unbreakable, unique digital fingerprint that proved the data I had submitted had not been altered by one single byte since 4 p.m. Valen permitted herself a small, sharp nod. Good. The hash key is attached as Appendix A to my legal brief. It validates the immutability of your data. It preempts any claim of fabrication. She continued. While you were in the taxi, our legal team pinged the compliance officer at the bank holding the Knox LLC accounts. We didn't file a freeze. That would have been premature. We filed an enhanced due diligence request, citing potential structuring and gross conflict of interest from a senior executive at our firm. The bank's internal alarms are now lit up like a Christmas tree. Her assets are visible, and they are flagged. Edmund added the final, crushing piece of evidence. And accounting. I had them run a spot check. They did a cross-check of the storage and logistics advisory invoices against the warehouse inventory logs and access records. He smiled that cold, thin smile. The advisory services she billed us for, they never happened. There are no building entry logs for her consultants, no meetings in the calendars, no reports filed to the repository. The inventory adjustments she claimed to advise on do not exist. It is a clean-cut textbook case of services not rendered fraud. A child could see it. It was perfect. It was flawless. It was utterly, terrifyingly legal. Avery thought she was a corporate predator, a wolf, but she was just an amateur criminal, blinded by arrogance. She was playing checkers, while my grandfather was playing a three-dimensional chess game mapped out in legal binders, with a kill zone already established. My grandfather looked at me. The shadow at the door hadn't moved. Avery was taking her time, composing herself for the performance of her life. "She will enter," he said, his voice low and steady. "She will use emotion. She will cry. She will yell. She will accuse you of being a jealous, grieving child. She will appeal to your father, who is not here. Do not engage." He fixed his eyes on me, the command absolute. "We will not raise our voices. We will not accuse. We will not have theatrics." He tapped Valen's binder. "Just facts. We will present the data. We will read the bylaws. We will enforce the policy." He leaned forward slightly. "The truth is a tool, Mara. Most people are too emotional to use it properly. They wield it like a club. Tonight, we will use it as a scalpel, and we will make a very clean cut." I looked down at the broom resting on the black table. It was the only thing in the room that was dirty. It was a cheap, domestic, violent thing. It was a relic from a different, messier world. But in this room, under these lights, it was transformed. It was no longer the weapon that had hit me. It was the physical link, the nexus, that connected her personal violence to her corporate crime. It was the irrefutable, tactile proof of her motive. I put my hand on the wooden handle. The polished, smooth wood was cold against my palm. My pulse, which had been racing, slowed. It settled into the cold, steady rhythm of the HVAC system. I wasn't a victim in this room. I was the primary witness. I was the analyst who found the data. The cheap weapon, the symbol of my humiliation, was now the cornerstone of an airtight legal case. It was Exhibit A. The shadow at the door moved. The massive, stainless steel handle turned, the snick of the latch mechanism echoing in the silence. The glass door opened. The glass door hissed open. Avery Knox Quinn did not just enter a room. She occupied it. The air, which had been sterile and cold, was instantly colonized by a cloud of her perfume, something expensive, floral, with a metallic note, like roses and new money. She was dressed for war, a midnight blue blazer with shoulders as sharp as an axe, dark slacks, and the spike-heeled shoes I had heard in the hall. Her hair was perfect, her makeup was immaculate, applied for a 9 a.m. presentation, not a midnight emergency. She was the very picture of the high-powered executive, summoned to handle a crisis. Then she saw me. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, raked over my body. They saw the pajamas. They saw the blood-stained collar of my shirt. They landed on my face, on the raw, purple, and swollen gash on my cheekbone. A flicker, a micro-expression of pure, unadulterated shock. She hadn't expected me to be here, in this room. Her shock lasted a nanosecond. It was instantly replaced by a mask of cool, corporate concern. Her gaze hardened. She was calculating, rerunning the equation. Then she saw the broom. It was still on the obsidian table, just to the side, an object of crude, domestic reality in her world of abstract finance. She looked at the broom, then back at my injured face, then to my grandfather, and she smirked. It was a small, tight, contemptuous twist of her lips. The smirk said everything. It said, "This is your play? A piece of trash and a crying girl? Pathetic." She genuinely believed it was absurd, that I was a child who had brought a prop to a boardroom. She thought this was my desperate, hysterical plea. She had no idea it was her indictment. "Edmund," she said, her voice a smooth, rich alto. She did not sit. She stood at the opposite end of the table, a general surveying the field. "What is this? I was told this was an emergency session on the Q4 budget. Instead, I find this." She gestured vaguely in my direction, a motion of dismissal. "A family matter, being aired out in the boardroom? It's highly inappropriate." My grandfather's hands remained clasped on his cane. The surgical white overhead lights gleamed on the silver. The main monitor at the end of the room was live, displaying the Stonebrook Capital logo in the top right corner. Below it, 2 boxes were visible, containing the severe, watchful faces of Mr. Davies in London and Ms. Thorne in Hong Kong. They were the 2 most powerful independent directors on our board. They were watching, silent, their faces illuminated by their own office screens in the dead of their respective nights. "Good evening, Ms. Knox," Edmund said, his voice level. "This is a special session of the board. You are a member of this board, and you are also the subject of this session." "The subject?" Avery laughed, a short, sharp, theatrical sound. "What is this? An inquisition? Because my stepdaughter is having an emotional breakdown?" "We'll start with your statement," Edmund said. He ignored her question. He did not engage. He simply gave her the floor. This was her stage. She took a breath, transforming into the concerned, powerful VP. "My statement," she began, "is one of deep concern. Concern for Mara. Concern for this company. As you all know, Mara has not been herself since her mother's passing. She has struggled." She looked at me, her eyes full of a sickening, performative pity. "I have tried to help her. Her father and I have given her a home. I gave her a position in my own division, but her performance has become erratic, unstable. This report she filed," she waved a hand dismissively, "is a perfect example. It's a thin, unsubstantiated fantasy, the work of a jealous analyst fixated on clerical errors, desperate for attention." She turned her fire on my grandfather. "And Edmund, you encouraging this delusion? Dragging our board members out of bed? Allowing her to bring props?" She pointed at the broom, her voice dripping with scorn. "This is a deeply troubled young woman, lashing out. She is a liability. This entire meeting is a farce." She looked directly at me. "Mara, honey, I know you're angry, but this has to stop." It was a brilliant performance. She had painted me as hysterical, grieving, incompetent, and jealous. She had framed this as a domestic drama she, the long-suffering stepmother, had tried to contain. The room was silent. Ms. Vallon was still. My grandfather was still. The faces on the screen were still. Edmund Quinn turned his head, just slightly, toward me. It was a simple nod, the gesture of a conductor cueing an instrument. I did not stand. I did not yell. I simply reached into my pocket and pulled out my company-issued phone, the one he had given me. I pressed play on the voice memo. The sound was shockingly loud in the soundproofed room. My own voice, thick and slurred with pain. Or what? And then, Avery's. Avery's real voice, not the smooth, modulated alto she was using now, but a low, vicious, reptilian hiss. "Or I will shred you. I will bury that report so deep, no one will ever see it. And then I will bury you. I will have you fired for gross incompetence and professional malice. I will tell your father you're unstable, grieving, delusional." The recording clicked off. Silence. Avery's face had gone a stark, papery white. Her mask of concerned VP didn't just crack, it shattered. The blood drained from her face so fast she looked like she might faint. Her eyes, wide with pure, animal terror, snapped from the phone to my grandfather and then to the silent, watching faces on the monitor. She had just heard her own voice confess. She had just heard herself, on an encrypted recording, explicitly link her threat of violence to the suppression of my report. The family matter and the corporate malfeasance were now, irrefutably, one and the same. "That's," she stammered, her voice losing its polish, becoming thin and reedy. "That's illegal. You recorded me. In my own home." "Ms. Vallon," Edmund said, his voice as calm as ever. Our general counsel spoke for the first time, her voice cutting through Avery's panic like a diamond cutter on glass. "One-party consent state," she said, not looking at Avery. "The device is company property. The conversation was held with a company employee regarding a direct threat to suppress a mandatory corporate audit. It is, by every legal definition, admissible in this proceeding. The recording has been uploaded and time-stamped as Exhibit B." She tapped a key on her laptop, the main screen, which had shown the faces of the board, now changed. It was my flowchart of Knox Procurement LLC. "While we are on the subject of the audit you wish to bury, Ms. Knox," Vallon continued, her voice relentless. "Let's review the findings." The screen was now populated with images of the invoices, the storage and logistics advisory fees, the round, inflated numbers. $75,000, $92,000, $120,000, Vallon read, her voice a monotone. "All for services accounting has confirmed were never rendered." The screen changed again, a new slide, 2 columns, left column, the metadata log for the invoices, showing the creator ID, SBP LT A. Quinn, right column, Avery's own HR file, showing her assigned laptop ID, SBP LT A. Quinn. "You created the invoices for a shell company named after yourself, on your own company laptop, and then you approved the payments yourself," Vallon stated. "It is, perhaps, the laziest example of 7-figure embezzlement I have ever had the displeasure of prosecuting." Avery was shaking. Her composure was gone. This was no longer a performance. She gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. This is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding in vendor onboarding, a clerical, a conflict of interest I was going to disclose. It's an error in process." It was the death rattle, the desperate grasp for bureaucratic jargon. "We agree," Edmund said, his voice soft. "It is a matter of process and of policy." He nodded to Vallon. The lawyer slid a single, bound document across the polished obsidian table toward Avery. It was her own executive contract. "Your leadership and ethics agreement, Ms. Knox," Edmund said, "which you signed upon your promotion to vice president, Ms. Vallon. Please read the relevant clause for the board." Vallon's eyes were fixed on the page. Clause 9.2. Removal for cause. "An officer of Stonebrook Capital shall be subject to immediate, non-negotiable removal and forfeiture of all non-vested stock and options in the event of gross misconduct." Gross misconduct is defined as, but not limited to, A. The commission of a felony or any act involving financial fraud or embezzlement, or B. Any act of violence, threat of violence, or willful intimidation directed at another employee of the firm, for any reason, on or off site. Avery stared at the clause. Her breathing was fast and shallow. She was trapped. Clause 9.2a was the fraud. Clause 9.2b was the assault. He had her on both. "She used violence to conceal the fraud," Edmund stated, speaking to the board members on the screen. "The two acts are inseparable. The nexus is absolute." He looked at me one last time, the final nod. This was my cue. I did not speak. I simply stood up. My legs were shaking, but I locked my knees. Ms. Vallon, without looking at me, slid a large, clear plastic evidence bag across the table. It was empty. I picked up the broom. The cheap wooden handle was smooth in my hand. I slid it, bristle end first, into the bag. I folded the top over and pressed the adhesive seal, locking the weapon inside. The plastic crinkled, the only sound in the room. I then placed the sealed bag in the center of the table, directly in front of Avery, on top of her ethics contract. "Exhibit A," I said, my voice hoarse but clear. "The weapon, taken from the assailant minutes after the assault, and secured as per the audio recording in Exhibit B." Avery looked at the broom, now sealed in plastic, a formal piece of evidence. She looked at the invoices on the screen. She looked at her own contract. She looked at my grandfather. She crumpled. You can't," she whispered, her voice finally breaking, the tears of a true defeat, not a performance, welling in her eyes. "Edward, my husband, your son, he will ruin you for this." My grandfather's face did not change. "Your husband," he said, "is, as I mentioned, a salaried employee. He has been notified of this session. He is currently on a plane, flying back from Singapore. He will be met at the airport by Ms. Valen's legal team, who will brief him on his wife's termination and impending criminal referral." He looked at the screen. "Mr. Davies, Ms. Thorne, we have a motion for the immediate removal of Vice President Avery Knox Quinn for cause, under Clause 9(2), Sections A and B. All in favor?" On the screen, Mr. Davies's face was grim. He simply said, "I, Ms. Thorne." Her expression one of utter disgust, said, "I, Ms. Valen," who was also a board officer, said, "I," my grandfather said, "I," he looked down the table. "Ms. Knox, as a board member, you are entitled to a vote." Avery's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. Her entire life, her entire perception, had just been dismantled in the span of 10 minutes. She lifted her head, and with her last shred of defiance, she spat out the word, "Nay." My grandfather nodded, as if this was expected. He pressed a button. The main screen changed. It was a simple, stark, white slide. The Stonebrook logo was in the corner. In the center, in black, sans serif font, was the official tally. Motion. Removal for cause. A. Knox Quinn. Vote. Tally. 7. 1 result. Motion carries. "The motion carries," Edmund Quinn said into the silence. "Miss Knox, you are removed, effective immediately. Frank from security will be up momentarily to escort you from the building. Do not return to your office. Do not touch your laptop. You are trespassing." Avery stared at the screen. 7-1. Her one, single, defiant vote against the entire weight of the company she had tried to defraud. She looked at me, her eyes promising a new kind of violence. I just looked back, my swollen face a living, throbbing testament to the policy she had violated. The game was over. The trap was sprung, and it was clean. The result of the vote, 7-1, hung in the air, a digital epitaph on the stark white screen. Avery stared at it, her body vibrating with a rage that was almost silent. The mask of the concerned VP was gone. The mask of the panicked victim was gone. All that was left was the raw, elemental core of her ambition, now cornered and thrashing. She took one, sharp, gasping breath, and she screamed. It was not a word, it was a sound, a high, tearing, animal sound of pure, unadulterated fury. A sound that should never be heard in a place like this. It was a sound that shattered the room's sterile, soundproofed perfection. "No!" Her voice, when it found words, was no longer the smooth, modulated alto. It was a raw, shredded shriek. She lunged forward, her hands splayed on the obsidian table, scattering Ms. Valen's neat papers. "You don't have the right," she screamed, her eyes, wild and bloodshot, fixed on my grandfather. "You are a figurehead, a ghost. My husband, your son, is the CEO. He runs this company. He will destroy you. He will have you declared incompetent. He will. She was panting, her mind scrambling for a threat, a foothold. This company is mine as much as it is yours. I built the operations that doubled your fourth quarter. You don't have the power to remove me. You have no right. My grandfather watched her. He waited. He let the final, ragged echo of her voice die in the room. The silence that fell in its wake was heavier, more profound than before. The faces of the board members on the screen watched, impassive, like judges at a witch trial. When the silence was absolute, Edmund Quinn turned his head, just slightly, toward Ms. Vallon. The general counsel, who had not flinched during the outburst, reached down to a black leather briefcase by her chair. She retrieved a single, thick, manila envelope. It was not a modern, corporate binder. It was an old-world object, sealed not with glue, but with a small, red string clasp. She slid it across the table. It stopped, perfectly, in front of my grandfather. Avery's breathing was harsh. She watched the envelope, her eyes narrowing, her mind already failing to process this new analog variable. Edmund did not rip it open. He slowly, deliberately, unwound the red string from the cardboard clasp. The sound of the string unwinding was impossibly loud. He folded the flap back and reached inside, pulling out a single, heavy vellum document, folded in thirds. He unfolded it. He did not read it. He knew what it said. "You are correct, Ms. Knox," he said, his voice so quiet it forced everyone in the room to lean in, to strain, to listen. "Your husband is the CEO." He paused, then turned the document around and slid it toward her. "He is the CEO," he continued, "at the pleasure of the trust, and I am the sole trustee." Avery's eyes scanned the page. I could see it from here. It was a single-page amendment to the Edmund Quinn Family Trust. His signature was at the bottom, dated 18 months ago, long before Avery had even begun her scheme. "This is a codicil," he explained, as if to a child, "which clarifies what has always been true. My 51% ownership is not a passive investment. It is an active, absolute, and indivisible controlling interest. This document grants the trustee, me, sole and final authority over all C-suite appointments, removals, and remunerations, with or without the consent of the other board members. Your husband's role, my son's role, is conditional." He looked her directly in the eye. The mask of the benign patriarch was completely gone, replaced by the face of the man who had built a billion-dollar empire from nothing, a face of cold, hard, structural power. "I do have the right," he said, "and I am exercising it now." The finality of the words was absolute. They were the sound of a vault door locking. Avery simply stared, her mouth slightly open, the scream she was about to utter dying in her throat. And then, the pivot. It was as clean and precise as a scalpel. My grandfather turned his chair, a slight, soundless motion on its bearings. He turned away from Avery, as if she had ceased to exist, as if she were a ghost who had already been exorcised. He turned to me. His eyes traveled, for a second time, over my swollen face. He saw the pajamas, the blood, the fear that was now being replaced by a deep, cold, echoing shock. "This firm," he said, his voice now crisp, all business, "has a significant leadership vacuum in its operations division, a vacuum created by the very person appointed to run it." He looked at the board members on the screen. "It has been proven vulnerable, not to outside market forces, but to internal rot, to a culture of perception over reality, to fraud, and to the intimidation that protects it. We require a new culture, effective immediately." He looked back at me. His gaze was not warm. It was not grandfatherly. It was an assessment. He was measuring me. "We require a leader," he said, "who understands that truth is not a narrative. It is a data point. We require a leader who is not afraid to look for the rot. We require a leader who has, in fact, already found it." He addressed the board, but his eyes stayed on me. I nominate Mara Quinn for the role of Interim Chief Operating Officer, effective immediately. She will report directly to this board. The breath in my lungs solidified. I couldn't inhale. Interim COO, Chief, Operating, Officer, me, the Senior Risk Analyst, in my pajamas. This wasn't just an execution, it was a coronation. This was the other half of his plan. Avery made a noise, a choked, wet sound of disbelief. Her? She's a child. She's an analyst. You're insane. Edmund ignored her. Mr. Davies? The face on the screen, a stern man in London, nodded. The contingency was briefed. Her audit was exceptional. I vote aye. Miss Thorne? The woman in Hong Kong, who had been watching me with an unreadable expression, spoke. Avery Knox built a culture of fear. We need the opposite. We need transparency. This appointment sends that message. I vote aye. Miss Vallon? Aye, the lawyer said, already typing on her laptop. The board accepts, Edmund said. As he spoke, the main screen flashed, the motion carries slide disappearing, replaced by a new one. Appointment confirmed. Mara Quinn, Interim Chief Operating Officer. The second the slide appeared, my phone vibrated in my pocket. A hard, insistent buzz. I pulled it out, my hand shaking. An email from HR, sent 10 seconds ago. Subject: Confidential. Executive Appointment and Onboarding, M. Quinn. Dear Ms. Quinn, in accordance with the resolution of the Board of Directors, we are pleased to confirm your appointment as Interim Chief Operating Officer for Stonebrook Capital, effective 2351 STs. Your new compensation package, security clearance protocols, and temporary housing information are attached. Your new direct reporting line is to the Board of Directors, COO, Edmund Quinn. Chairman, welcome to the executive team. It was real. It was automated. It was already in the system. This is not, Avery whispered, her voice a dead leaf scraping on the floor. This is not happening. It is, Edmund said. He was not finished. He turned his attention back to the weeping, shattered woman still clinging to the chair. This is not just an internal matter. Ms. Knox, he said, his voice like ice. Stonebrook Capital does not hide its failures. We excise them. Ms. Vallon's office will be filing a full referral with the District Attorney's Office at 9:00 a.m. tomorrow, complete with all exhibits, AB, and the full financial audit. We will also be filing a civil suit to claw back every dollar you stole. He leaned forward, and his voice dropped so only the three of us in the room could hear it. Personal conduct, he said, his eyes flicking to my bruised face, has corporate consequences. This is the first and last lesson of the new Stonebrook. He then reached into his vest pocket and retrieved a thin, black, metal keycard and a heavy matching fob. He placed them on the table in front of me. They landed with a soft, heavy thud. The Harbor Row Loft, he said. The COO's corporate apartment. It is at your disposal. Effective immediately. You will not be returning to Glenbridge. Ms. Vallon has already dispatched a secure service to retrieve your personal effects. Your first meeting is at 7 a.m. A car will be downstairs. It was not a gift. It was logistics. It was a tool for the new job. It was also a final, clean cut, severing me from the house, from my father, from the life I had before I walked into this room. He had one final piece of business. My grandfather looked away from me, away from Avery. He looked directly into the small, black camera lens at the base of the main monitor. He was no longer speaking to the people in the room. He was speaking to the company. He was dictating the new policy, the new story, for the entire global firm. Lastly, he said, his voice resonating with a new public power, I want a message sent to all staff, worldwide, accompanying the 7:15 a.m. press release, a single line. He paused, letting the words gather their full weight. At Stonebrook Capital, risk speaks, and we listen. There is no other way. I heard a sound in my own chest, It was my heart. It had been hammering against my ribs for an hour. A frantic, panicked bird. Now, it slowed. It wasn't beating, it was thudding, a low, heavy, industrial beat. It was the sound of a massive, heavy elevator, having been in freefall, finally engaging its brakes and coming to a smooth, perfect, jarring stop at its designated floor. I looked at Avery. She had recoiled from the table. She had backed away, step by step, until her back was physically pressed against the cold glass wall of the room. She was trapped between the obsidian table and the endless, black, rainy night. The city lights, the streams of traffic far below, were a fractured, glittering tapestry behind her. The surgical white light from inside the room lit her face, and the glass wall reflected it. I saw her face, and I saw her reflection, layered on top of the city. Both were broken. The arrogance was gone. The beauty was gone. The perception she had built her entire life around had been shattered, and there was nothing left underneath. Just a hollow, terrified, empty space. A soft, high-pitched ding echoed from the elevator bay. Frank, the security guard, had arrived. He was here to escort the trespasser from the building. Sleep is not a concept. It is an abstract, a luxury from a former life, a life that ended approximately 7 hours ago. It is 7:15 a.m. I am standing in front of a floor-to-ceiling window in a loft on Harbor Row. The sun, a brutal, optimistic orange, is rising over the financial district, reflecting blinding light off the glass towers. My tower, 77 Glass Row, is visible from here, a dark, sleeping spearhead against the new day. This is the COO's corporate apartment. It is a cavern of white marble, brushed steel, and cold. Unsat-upon leather furniture, it smells of nothing. It is a sterile, beautiful, multi-million-dollar box, and it is now my temporary home. I haven't slept. I haven't showered. I am still in the clothes from last night. My sweatpants and the pajama shirt, still stained with a small, dark brown constellation of my own blood. There is a bathroom mirror the size of my old bedroom. I look at myself. The woman in the mirror is a stranger. The left side of her face is a grotesque, magnificent bloom of purple, blue, and black. The gash on the cheekbone has closed, but it's an angry red line. My eye is swollen almost shut. It is the face of a brawling back-alley victim. It is also the face of the interim chief operating officer of Stonebrook Capital. I touched the skin, lightly. It was hot, tight, and throbbed with a low, geographic pulse. This was my proof. This was my new uniform. The silent, empty loft was the sound of the aftermath. Frank, the night guard, had appeared at the glass room door just as the board vote concluded. He hadn't looked at Avery. He had just said, "Ms. Knox, this way, please." Avery, broken and hollow, had looked at my grandfather. "Edward will. He will. Edward is my son," my grandfather had replied, his voice devoid of all emotion. "But this is my company, Frank." Frank had taken her arm. She didn't fight. She was a ghost being evicted. I watched her heels, the ones that had clicked with such arrogance, scuff on the carpet as she was led away. My grandfather and I rode the elevator down in silence. He hadn't looked at me. He had just stared at the steel doors. When they opened in the lobby, my taxi was gone. A new, black, executive sedan was waiting. "The Harbor Row keys are on the table," he'd said. "A secure service has retrieved your necessities from Glenbridge. Your new credentials are in the welcome packet. Your first meeting is at 7 a.m. He had walked away, his cane tapping on the slate, leaving me on the sidewalk. Not a grandfather. I had thought, a majority shareholder. In the loft, my necessities were already here. A single suitcase, packed by a stranger. My old suits, my laptop, my personal phone. A new phone was on the kitchen counter, an executive issue encrypted device. At exactly 7:15 a.m., it buzzed. It was not a call. It was the digital shockwave of the night's events hitting the world. A single email from our new head of PR, a man I hadn't yet met. Subject: For your Avery awareness. Press release. Attached. Final Stonebrook Leadership Release, PDF. I opened it. It was a masterpiece of corporate obfuscation, a beige-colored lie that told the absolute truth. Leadership change at Stonebrook Capital, New York. NY. 7 Est. Stonebrook Capital announced today that Avery Knox Quinn has stepped down from her position as Vice President of Operations, effective immediately, to pursue other opportunities. The Board of Directors has unanimously appointed Mara Quinn as Interim Chief Operating Officer. Ms. Quinn, formerly a Senior Risk Analyst with the firm, brings a data-driven, forensic approach to operations. Mara's integrity and sharp analytical skill are exactly what the firm needs to drive our next phase of transparent growth, said founder and chairman Edmund Quinn. Step down. Pursue other opportunities. The classic bloodless phrases for a corporate execution. My new inbox began to flood. The press release had gone public. Now, the internal communications were firing. The next email. Subject: Action required. Internal FAQ. Staff. It was the draft for the all-staff email. I was the final approval. I read it. Q. Why this sudden leadership change? A. The Board of Directors acted on new material information regarding operational and ethical compliance. Q. What does ethical compliance mean? A. It means our policies were violated. The board acted swiftly to enforce those policies. Q. Is Avery Knox Quinn under investigation? A. The firm is cooperating fully with authorities on a related non-financial matter. Our policy is not to comment on the personal conduct of former employees. Q. Why was Mara Quinn appointed? A. Ms. Quinn was directly responsible for identifying the operational risks that led to this change. The board has full confidence in her ability to lead the division. It was perfect. Not a single lie. It didn't shame Avery. It simply stated the verifiable facts. It was a legal document disguised as a friendly FAQ. It was Ms. Valen's work. I was sure. I typed my first official command as COO. Approve? Send now. I hit send. A new calendar alert pinged. 8 a.m. Meeting with Valen and NYPD. Corporate Counsel Offices, 45th St. I showered. The hot water on my face was agony. I put on one of my old gray suits. I looked at the stranger in the mirror again, the bruised, swollen face of the COO. I applied no makeup. I would not hide it. This face was now part of the company policy. The black car was waiting downstairs. Ms. Valen's external law office was a silent, beige-carpeted fortress. She had not summoned the police to 77 Glass Row. She had brought me to a neutral, controlled location. 2 detectives were waiting in a conference room. They were in suits, not uniforms. They stood when I entered. Ms. Quinn, the older one, Detective Reardon, said. He didn't look shocked by my face. He looked bored. He had been briefed. Ms. Valen has provided the audio file, the financial audits, and the corporate charter, he said. We just need your formal statement and the physical evidence. A police forensics photographer was there. He was quiet. Turn to the left, please. Click, flash. To the right, click, flash. Straight on, click, flash. My face was now their evidence. My pain was now part of the public record. I placed the sealed plastic evidence bag on the table, the broom. Reardon looked at it. He looked at the shape of my bruise. He nodded. Fits the impact pattern. He signed a chain of custody form and handed me a copy. I was given a slip of paper, a case number, domestic violence and assault. Thank you for your cooperation, Ms. Quinn. With the audio and the financial motive, this is straightforward. As we walked out, Ms. Valen was on her phone. She hung up and looked at me. The litigation hold is active, she said. I've just given the order. Every email, every file, Every chat log on the Stonebrook servers pertaining to Knox LLC or Avery Quinn from the last 2 years is now frozen, locked, and flagged for legal discovery. The net is sealed. At 9:30 a.m., I walked back into 77 Glass Row, not as an analyst, as the COO. The office was silent. The morning trading buzz was muted. Everyone had seen the press release. Everyone had seen the internal FAQ, and now they saw me. They saw me walk, in my gray suit, to the executive elevator. They saw my face. The whispers were a physical wave, following me. My new office was on the 34th floor, next to the glass room. It had been Avery's. It still smelled of her perfume. I called building services. I want the carpet, chairs, and drapes replaced, today, and paint the walls a different color, white. My first real act, my second act, I sat at my massive desk. I pulled up the operational budgets, the ones I had audited, the ones she had used to fund her perception campaign, the ones she had used to pay her own ghost company. I saw the line items she had cut. The 401k match, the healthcare subsidies. I opened a new memo. Subject: a realignment of internal assets to all staff, from Mara Quinn. Interim COO. Body: effective immediately. The 1.5% reduction to the 401k match is rescinded. The Q4 healthcare copay increase is cancelled. A full review of all employee benefit packages is underway. We were focusing on the wrong optics. We cut the wrong things. That stops now. I hit send. I went to the executive kitchenette, the one that smelled of burnt coffee last night. The place was packed, but it went silent when I walked in. People stared at my face. They stared at the new, raw, purple authority I was wearing. Then I saw it. Pinned to the main corkboard, a single piece of printer paper. Someone had written on it, in thick black Sharpie, a direct response to Avery's old slogan: "Perception is not profit, integrity is." My old team lead from the risk department saw me. He just looked at me, at my face, then at the sign. He gave me a single, slow nod. It was not a nod of congratulations. It was a nod of terror and of profound respect. Risk speaks, and we listen. My personal phone, the old one, rang in my pocket. I looked at the screen. "Dad?" I walked into the empty glass room, the sun now high and white, and answered. The line was silent for a full 10 seconds. I could hear the faint, static-filled air of an airport lounge. He was back from Singapore. He had been met by Ms. Vallen's team. He knew. His voice, when it came, was a ghost. "Mara, are you okay?" I looked at my reflection in the glass. The city was sharp and clear behind me. My swollen face was superimposed over it. I was no longer his daughter. I was a policy. I was a consequence. "I'm working, Dad," I said. I hung up the phone. My new executive phone buzzed. A text from the head of PR. PR, Financial Times, Bloomberg, and the Journal are all calling. The blogosphere is exploding. Rumors of embezzlement, violence, a family coup. They're all asking about your face. I texted back. PR, recommend no comment. My reply, no comment. I opened my personal Instagram account. I aimed the camera not at my face, not at the office, but out the window. I took one, clear, cold photo of the morning sky, high above the city, as seen from the glass room. No caption. I posted it. Let them talk. I was in the tower. They were on the street. The day ended. 10 p.m. I was still at my new desk, sifting through the wreckage of Avery's files. The ghost vendor contracts spread out before me like a map. My personal phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Congrats. COO. I frowned. I didn't have time for this. Who is this? The reply was instant. Your driver from last night. Mr. Quinn asked me to check on you. A small, sharp, painful smile cracked the skin on my face. I typed back. Thanks for the exhibit. I put the phone down. The screen dark. I turned back to the spreadsheets. The cleanup had just begun. It took 2 full days before I returned to Glenbridge. 2 days of living in the sterile, white marble silence of the Harbor Row loft. 2 days of wearing the same gray suit, because it was the only one in the apartment. 2 days of speaking to lawyers, auditors, and a new, very expensive PR team. 2 days of seeing my own bruised face reflected in the glass walls of my new office. My new executive assistant, a ruthlessly efficient woman named Carter, who had materialized at 8 a.m. the day after, had arranged it. "You have a 90-minute window. Ms. Quinn, a car is waiting. The legal team has confirmed the residence is clear. Your father is at a hotel. Ms. Knox Quinn is elsewhere." Elsewhere, the legal term for posting bail. The drive back to the suburbs felt like a journey to a foreign country. The black sedan ate up the highway miles, leaving the sharp, glass canyons of the financial district for the soft, tree-lined streets of my childhood. The car pulled up to the curb. It was the same curb where the taxi had waited, a lifetime ago. The house was silent. It looked smaller, just a collection of wood and stone. Crouching under the gray afternoon sky, I used my old key. It still worked. The front hall smelled wrong. It was stale. The air was dead. Ms. Knox Quinn's personal effects were removed by her counsel this morning. The driver, a new one, said from the doorway, he was instructed not to let me be alone. I walked into the kitchen where it had happened. It was clean, too clean. Avery, or whoever she had sent, had scrubbed the place. The smell of bleach was gone, replaced by the sharp, lemony scent of furniture polish. She had tried to erase the scene, to wipe away the evidence, but she had missed a spot. There, on the dark, hardwood floor, just beside the dishwasher where I had fallen, a scratch, a long, faint, crescent-shaped gouge in the polished wood. It was from the broom, from the first swing, the one I had blocked with my arm, the one that had skittered off my watch and hit the floor. I crouched down, my suit jacket pulling tight across my back, the throb in my cheek, now a dull, persistent ache, flared for a moment, a muscle memory of the impact. I traced the scratch with my fingernail. It was a scar in the wood, a permanent record. I remembered the sound, the dry clack of wood on bone, the sound that had changed everything. Avery had taken her things. The living room was hollowed out. Her expensive, minimalist furniture was gone. Her art, all beige and gray abstracts, was off the walls, leaving pale rectangles where they had hung. All that remained was my father's old, worn leather armchair, looking lost and abandoned in the center of the vast, empty room. Family debris, the wreckage of a corporate merger that had failed. I didn't want the suits in the closet downstairs, the ones the secure service had missed. I didn't want anything from this new, empty life. I walked upstairs, my footsteps echoing in the empty house. I went to my old room. It was as I had left it, untouched. I went to the room at the end of the hall, my mother's study. My father had never changed it. Avery, in all her perception management, had known this one room was off limits. She never came in here. It smelled of old books and dried lavender. It was the only room in the house that still felt real. I opened the drawer of her old desk. Inside, beneath a stack of faded, blue stationery, was a small, cream-colored card. It was a note she had written me, years ago, when I had been passed over for a scholarship I deserved. I had been crying then, too. I had been hurt. I had said it was unfair. Her handwriting was a strong, elegant cursive, black ink on thick cardstock. It wasn't a note of comfort, it was a note of instruction. Mara, the world is full of soft people who will bend, be the spine. I slid the card out, I held it in my hand. Be the spine, the hard, unbending structure that holds everything up. The part that can be bruised, that can ache, but cannot, must not, break. I slipped the small, heavy card into the inner pocket of my suit jacket. It rested against my ribs. I felt its hard, rectangular edge. I took nothing else, not a photo, not a book, not a piece of clothing, just that I walked out of the house. I locked the front door behind me. I heard the click of the deadbolt. I did not look back. I got in the car. 77 Glass Row, I said. The next morning, the office was different. The whispers had stopped. The fear had been replaced by a quiet, intense, electrical hum. The memo about the 401k had spread like wildfire. The memo about the integrity slogan was now on every floor. My new office had been transformed. The carpets were gone, replaced with cool, gray slate, matching the lobby. The walls were stark white. Avery's perfume was gone. It smelled of paint and new industrial glue. It smelled like a beginning. I spent the day signing off on the new reality. I signed the order for a full, firm-wide, third-party audit of all vendor contracts from the last 24 months. I signed the order dissolving Knox Procurement LLC and initiating the civil asset forfeiture case. I signed a new policy, drafted by Valen, that strengthened whistleblower protections and mandated an anonymous third-party ethics hotline. I was taking the abstract, integrity, transparency, and turning it into hard, enforceable policy. I was turning my pain into code. Mid-afternoon, an anonymous email arrived in my new inbox. It was from a general, unmonitored account, a ghost. Subject: "We are sorry." The message was short. It was from a group of analysts and managers in the operations department, Avery's old team. We knew. We didn't know what. But we knew something was wrong. The Knox accounts. We were told not to ask. We were scared of her. We were scared for our jobs, for our families. We are sorry we were silent. We are glad you are here. I looked at the message for a long time. Scared is human. I knew what that felt like. I had felt it in the kitchen. I did not reply to them directly. That would expose them. Instead, I sent another all-staff memo. My third. Subject: a note on fear to all staff. Body: we have all been in situations where it is easier to be silent. Being scared is a human response, hiding what is true. That is a choice. From now on, this firm will protect those who choose to speak. We will build a spine. That is all. At 6 p.m., the day was ending. The city was turning to gold and shadow. There was a knock on my new, open door. My grandfather. He was in his usual dark vest, his cane in hand. He didn't enter. He just stood in the doorway, framed by the white paint. He didn't hug me. He didn't ask about my father. He didn't ask about the house. He looked at my face. The bruising had begun to yellow at the edges. It was a fading, ugly map. He just nodded. It was a nod of approval, a nod that said, "Good. You are here. You are working." "Carter has your schedule," he said, his voice all business. "Tomorrow, you brief the street, the investors, the analysts at the other firms. They are curious about our leadership change. They will be looking for weakness. Do not show it." He turned to leave. "Wait," I said. My voice was hoarse. He stopped, turning back. There was one question, the one piece of the puzzle I couldn't place, the one thing that felt almost human. "Why?" I asked. "Last night, why did you call me a taxi? Why not a police car? Why not an ambulance?" He stood there for a long moment, his clear, sharp eyes looking not at my bruise, but at me, at the spine he was testing. He answered, his voice quiet, but hard as steel. "Because you don't walk into power bleeding." He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. He turned, and I heard the steady, rhythmic tap, tap, tap of his cane on the new slate floor as he walked away. I stood there, the silence of the office settling around me, and I finally, completely, understood. He hadn't sent the taxi to rescue me. A rescue would have made me a victim. He would have been the savior, and I would have been the grateful, wounded granddaughter. He would have taken my data, won his war, and sent me off to recover. No. He sent a taxi, a car for a transaction, not a crisis, because he wasn't saving me. He was summoning me. He was calling an asset to a meeting. He told me to bring the broom. He wasn't just collecting evidence. He was forcing me to carry my own weapon, to hold the very thing that had hurt me, to transform it from an object of my trauma into a tool of my power. He didn't save me from the kitchen floor. He didn't protect me. He simply opened a door on the 34th floor and waited, to see if I was strong enough to get in the cab, to stop the bleeding, to put the evidence on the table, and to take my seat. He hadn't saved me. He had just reminded me to be the spine. It is 9 a.m. The sun is a white, clinical disk in the sky, pouring pure, unfiltered light into the glass room. I am standing at the entrance. Carter, my new assistant, materializes at my elbow. She is silent, holding a small, heavy box of new business cards. The ink is still fresh. She offers them to me. I take one. The cardstock is thick, weighted, the edges a sharp, metallic silver. The engraving is simple, black, and brutal in its newness. Mara Quinn, Interim Chief Operating Officer, Stonebrook Capital. I slide the card into the pocket of my new suit, a dark, severe charcoal gray, a piece of armor I had delivered from a 24-hour tailor at 5 a.m. My face is a map of the new policy. The swelling has subsided, but the bruise remains, a spectacular, fading nebula of yellow, purple, and green. I have not covered it with makeup. It is the first item on the agenda. I walk into the glass room. Today, it is not a boardroom, it is a studio, it is a stage. The long obsidian table has been pushed to the side. A single, minimalist steel podium stands in the center. A microphone, thin and black, points at the empty space. Multiple cameras are positioned, their small red lights glowing. This is the all-hands meeting. This is the briefing for the entire firm. Thousands of employees, from London to Hong Kong, are patched in, their faces a digital mosaic on massive screens that have been erected along the far wall. The mood is not corporate meeting, it is presidential address after a coup. The white surgical light of the new morning flows over the empty podium, over the glass walls, over the polished slate floor. It is the light of a new, cold day. I walk to the podium. I place my hands on it. I look into the central camera lens. I do not smile. I can feel the collective, digital inhalation of thousands of people. They are watching the analyst with the bruised face who is now, somehow, their boss. I begin. My voice is low, clear, and amplified. It does not shake. We are not fixing optics. I let the words hang in the air. A direct execution of Avery's entire philosophy. I let them land in every office, on every floor, in every time zone. We are fixing operations. I see a few people on the screens nod. I see the terror and confusion in their eyes being replaced by a new, dawning, uncertain focus. For the past several years, this company has been run on a single idea, that perception is profit, that the story we tell is more valuable than the truth we live. That idea, I pause, is a lie. It is a financial vulnerability. It is a moral rot, and it ends today. I gesture to the massive screen behind me. It flickers to life, not with charts or graphs, but with 4 simple, enormous words, set in the same black, sans serif font as my new business cards. Transparency, dignity, due process, results. This is the new metric, I say. This is our new policy. Transparency means we do not hide our data. Dignity means we do not cut benefits to fund brand hospitality. Due process means we do not rule by fear. And results, I say, mean the numbers must be real, not a story. As I pause, letting the 4 words burn into their minds, my new executive phone, resting face down on the podium, vibrates, a hard, sharp bzzzt. I glance down. A text message from Ms. Vallon, DA has filed, indictment secured, Avery Knox Quinn, 2 counts, assault, 1 count, witness intimidation, she is in custody. I look at the message for 1 second. It is the final, legal stamp on the events of the last 48 hours. It is the end of the old story. I reach over, my hand steady. I press the button on the side of the phone. The screen goes dark. I silence it. That was then. This is now. I look back at the camera. Before we discuss the new operational audit, I say, my voice level, there is one final piece of internal business. I step away from the podium. I walk to the side of the room, to a new, built-in shelving unit made of glass and steel. It is the new internal archive, a place for artifacts. I bend down, out of sight of the camera for a moment. When I rise, I am holding it. The broom. It has been returned from the NYPD evidence locker. It is clean, it is sterile, but it is unmistakable. A cheap, wooden handle, frayed bristles, a small, white, official police tag, like a toe tag, is looped around the handle, bearing a case number, my case number. A collective, audible gasp comes from the speakers, thousands of people, watching me hold the very weapon that was used against me, the weapon that, they now understand, was the ethical compliance failure. I do not treat it as a traumatic object. I treat it as a corporate document. I walk to the central, empty glass shelf, eye level for everyone. I place the broom on it, laying it flat. I position it so the police evidence tag is visible. It is not a threat. It is a promise. It is a museum piece. It is the first artifact of the new Stonebrook, a permanent, physical reminder. I walk back to the podium. The silence in the room, in the world, is absolute. It is the silence of a held breath, of 1,000 people staring, finally understanding. I lean into the microphone. I look at the camera. I look at all of them. In this company, I say, my voice resonating, policy is personal. 1 beat of silence, 2, then, a sound. It starts in the Hong Kong feed, a single pair of hands, then London, then the 28th floor, my old risk department, their feed lighting up. It is not polite. Corporate applause. It is a roar. It is an explosion. It is a sudden, violent, cathartic release of years of fear, of silence, of frustration. The sound, from thousands of people, funnels into the glass room, and it hits the massive plate glass walls. It is a physical force. It is the sound of a storm. It echoes. It is the sound of the rain, the sound of the storm that had been hammering on the roof of the taxi, the sound that had hidden my arrival. But this is not a storm of water. It is a storm of approval. The circle is closed. The violence of the rain has been replaced by the power of the applause. I do not smile. I do not cry. I just stand there, and I let them. I let the sound wash over the room, over me, cleaning the last of the bleach and the perfume away. I nod. Once, a simple, decisive gesture. That is all. Get to work. The feeds cut. The cameras go dark. I am alone in the glass room. The applause echoes in my head. I turn away from the podium. I walk to the window, the one that looks out over the city. The sun is high, a white fire. The city is sharp, clear, and focused. I look down at the Harbor Row, my new home, glittering in the light. I look at my reflection in the glass, the woman with the bruised face, the interim COO, the spine. The screen fades to black. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We truly appreciate you spending your time with us. Where in the world are you listening from? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to connect and hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing and liking this video. And if you really loved it, please support us by hitting that hype button, so this story can be heard by even more people.